We've all been there, caught in the mysterious power of human connection, where someone occupies your thoughts despite no words exchanged, no messages sent, no conversations shared. And yet their presence in your mind feels vivid and undeniable. Let's begin by acknowledging a truth that we often resist. Our minds are not just cognitive processors of information. They are also intricate storage spaces for emotions, especially the ones we don't know how to resolve. When someone is constantly in your thoughts despite no communication, it's a signal that your mind is holding space for emotions that remain unfinished, unspoken, or unresolved. This is not a flaw. It's a feature of how we're wired as human beings. We are creatures of connection. And connection leaves marks on us, some beautiful, some painful, and many that lie somewhere in between. When a relationship, interaction, or even a fleeting moment with someone feels incomplete, your mind doesn't just let it go. It holds on to it, trying to make sense of what happened, why it happened, and what it means for you. Think of it this way: emotions are like energy. They don't simply disappear because a conversation ended or because someone walked away. If you never had the chance to express what you truly felt, your mind takes on the role of keeper of the unresolved. It plays scenarios on repeat, revisiting old conversations, imagining new ones, or even creating alternate endings. But here's the challenge: while your mind is busy holding on to what's unfinished, it can leave you feeling stuck. It's as if part of your emotional energy is tied to this person or situation, preventing you from being fully present in the here and now. And that's why it's so important to face these unresolved feelings instead of ignoring them. So, how do we confront these emotions? First, start by identifying what you're truly feeling. It's easy to say, I miss him, or I can't stop thinking about her, but those surface level thoughts are often rooted in deeper emotions. Are you feeling hurt because of unmet expectations? Angry because of unanswered questions? Lonely because of their absence? Or maybe you're holding on to hope that things could still change or be different. Once you've identified the emotions, the next step is to express them. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean reaching out to the person involved. Sometimes the healing process doesn't require their participation. Instead, you can journal, talk to a trusted friend or therapist, or even speak aloud to yourself. The goal is to release those emotions from your internal storage space. By expressing them, you begin the process of freeing your mind and heart. And finally, give yourself grace. Holding space for unresolved feelings is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of how deeply you care. It shows that your capacity for connection is vast and meaningful. But just as your mind is capable of holding on to these feelings, it is also capable of releasing them. You don't have to rush the process, but you do have to commit to it. The person in your mind may never come back, and the closure you seek may never arrive in the way you hoped. But you can create closure within yourself. You can honor the emotions that linger without letting them define your future. Holding space for unresolved feelings is your mind's way of saying, this mattered and that's okay. But you get to decide when it's time to release that space and reclaim it for something new. When someone occupies your mind without any communication, the natural instinct is to assume it's all about them. You might wonder what they're doing, if they're thinking about you too, or why they left your life in silence. But the deeper truth is that their presence in your thoughts often says more about you than it does about them. It reflects something internal, your emotions, your needs, and your inner narrative far more than it reflects their actions or intentions. Human relationships are complex, but one thing remains simple: the way you feel about someone often mirrors how you feel about yourself. When someone lingers in your mind, it may not necessarily mean they are special or irreplaceable. Instead, it could mean they represent something you're seeking or something you've lost within yourself. Let's unpack that. They are a reflection of your needs. Sometimes the person who occupies your thoughts represents a void you are trying to fill. Maybe their presence in your life once brought you comfort, validation, or joy. And now in their absence, you find yourself craving not just them, but the emotional experience they symbolized. For example, if they made you feel valued, Their absence may highlight a deeper question. Do I value myself when I'm alone? If they gave you a sense of belonging, their silence may bring up fears of loneliness or rejection. This is why it's so important to shift the focus inward. Instead of asking, why aren't they here for me? Ask yourself, what am I longing for? And how can I provide it for myself? The truth is, no one person can be the permanent source of our emotional fulfillment. When someone's absence feels overwhelming, it's often a sign that you've outsourced a part of your emotional well-being to them. This is an opportunity to take that power back. It reveals your fears and vulnerabilities. When someone stays in your mind, it can also reveal fears that live beneath the surface. Fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough, or fear of never finding closure. These fears are not about the other person, they're about you and how you perceive your own worth and security. Here's the hard part. It's easy to project these fears outward. It's easier to think, if only they would call me, I'd feel better, rather than confront the deeper insecurity of feeling unworthy of love or attention. But the reality is, no call or message can heal what's broken inside of you. The work of healing belongs to you alone. When you shift the focus from them to yourself, you empower yourself to address these fears head on. Ask yourself, what do I fear most about their silence? And how can I soothe that fear without needing them to respond? It's about the story you're telling yourself. The absence of communication creates a void, and our minds hate voids. So we fill them with stories. They don't care about me. I wasn't good enough for them. Maybe I did something wrong. These stories often have little to do with the other person and everything to do with the narrative you've built about yourself. Think about it. If you deeply believed in your own worth, would their silence feel like a rejection? Or would it simply feel like a reflection of their own journey, separate from your value? The story you tell yourself about their silence can either reinforce your insecurities or strengthen your self-worth. So pause and reflect. What story are you telling yourself? Is it one of scarcity and self-doubt, or is it one of abundance and self-love? You have the power to rewrite that story at any moment. This is an invitation for growth. When someone occupies your mind, it's an invitation to grow. It's a chance to look inward and ask, what is this situation trying to teach me about myself? Maybe it's teaching you to set healthier boundaries. Maybe it's pushing you to cultivate more self-compassion. Or maybe it's reminding you that your happiness and peace cannot be dependent on someone else's presence. This moment of reflection is not about blaming yourself or dismissing the connection you had with this person. It's about recognizing that their silence is not the determining factor of your worth or your future. The focus shifts from waiting for their actions to taking responsibility for your own healing and growth. Reclaiming your power. Ultimately, when someone lingers in your mind, it's a call to reclaim your power. Their silence does not define your story, you do. You have the ability to meet your own needs, confront your own fears, and rewrite your own narrative. This is not an easy process. It requires vulnerability, courage, and a commitment to self-reflection. But the reward is freedom, freedom from the weight of unspoken words, freedom from the need for external validation, and freedom to move forward with confidence and grace. The next time you find yourself consumed by thoughts of someone who isn't communicating, pause and ask yourself, what is this teaching me about myself? And how can I use this moment to grow? Because in the end, it's not about them. It's about you, your journey, your healing, and your ability to create a life that is whole and fulfilling with or without their presence. Silence is one of the most uncomfortable things we can experience in relationships, yet it is also one of the most powerful. When communication with someone ceases, we often view that silence as a void, a vacuum waiting to be filled. And in the absence of their voice, we begin to fill the silence with stories of our own making. But the truth is, silence isn't just something that happens to us. It's something we interpret, embellish, and sometimes even weaponize against ourselves. Let's start here. Human beings are storytellers by nature. Our minds are wired to seek meaning and coherence, even when there's no clear explanation available. Silence, by its very nature, offers no clarity. It doesn't tell you why someone stopped calling, why they didn't reply to your message, or why they faded from your life. But instead of sitting with the unknown, your mind gets to work, filling in the blanks. And here's the tricky part. The stories we write in silence are often shaped by our own fears, insecurities, and past experiences. The stories we tell ourselves in silence. When someone goes silent, your mind might tell you a story like, they don't care about me. I must have done something wrong. I wasn't good enough for them. These stories rarely reflect the reality of the situation. Instead, they reflect the narrative you've internalized about yourself over time. If you struggled with feelings of unworthiness, the silence may feel like confirmation of those fears. If you've experienced rejection in the past, their absence may feel like a pattern repeating itself. But let's take a step back. What if their silence has nothing to do with you? What if it's about their own journey, their own struggles, or their own inability to communicate? When you interpret silence through the lens of your insecurities, you make it about you, even when it might not be. Silence is ambiguous, but you're not powerless. Silence is inherently ambiguous. It doesn't come with explanations, excuses, or reassurances. And because of this ambiguity, it's easy to let silence become a breeding ground for negative self-talk. But here's the good news. While you can't control someone else's silence, you can control the story you write about it. You have the power to choose what meaning you assign to their absence. Instead of jumping to self-blame or assuming the worst, try reframing the narrative. Instead of thinking they don't care about me, try. Their silence is about them, not me. I don't have all the information, so I won't jump to conclusions. Their silence doesn't define my worth. Reframing doesn't erase the discomfort of silence, but it does prevent you from turning it into a story that harms your sense of self. How silence can be a mirror. Silence has a way of reflecting back to you the things you need to address within yourself. If someone's absence leaves you feeling rejected, it might be an opportunity to explore why rejection feels so painful to you. If their lack of communication leaves you feeling abandoned, it might be a chance to examine where you've placed your sense of security. In this way, silence can be a teacher, not because it's pleasant, but because it forces you to look inward. It challenges you to separate your identity from someone else's actions, to find peace even in uncertainty, and to confront the stories you've been carrying about yourself. Silence doesn't have to be the final chapter. It's easy to think of silence as the end of a story, a closed door, or a definitive rejection. But silence is rarely that simple. Sometimes silence is a pause, a moment for reflection, both for you and for the other person. Sometimes silence is a boundary, a signal that someone needs space or time to process their own life. And sometimes silence is an invitation for you to take control of the narrative. Instead of waiting for someone else to break the silence, consider what it might look like to close the chapter on your own terms. That doesn't necessarily mean reaching out or seeking closure from them. It could mean choosing to let go of the story you've been writing and moving forward without needing all the answers. The power of writing your own story. Here's the truth: silence only has the power you give it. If you allow it to define your worth, it will. If you let it consume your thoughts and energy, it will. But if you see silence as an opportunity to reclaim your voice, it can become a turning point. You don't need someone else to fill the silence for you to find peace. You can write your own story, a story of resilience, self-compassion, and inner strength. You can choose to believe that their silence doesn't diminish your value, that your life doesn't hinge on their response, and that your journey continues regardless of their participation. Silence can be many things: a void, a reflection, or a narrative. But the most empowering thing silence can be is a reminder that you are the author of your own story. You don't have to wait for someone else to speak to define your worth. You already have all the words you need within you. Have you ever wondered why certain people remain etched in your thoughts long after they've left your life? Why, despite the silence, they continue to occupy your mind, sometimes at the most unexpected moments? This phenomenon isn't just coincidence, it's deeply rooted in the connection between your mind and your heart. The truth is, the mind often seeks what the heart feels it's missing. And when the heart experiences a void, the mind tries to fill it by clinging to memories, replaying conversations, and imagining possibilities. But what is it that your heart is truly missing? Is it the person, or is it the emotions they awaken within you? Understanding this distinction is crucial because it's not always about the individual, it's about the imprint they left on your emotional landscape. The heart's longing and the mind's response. The human heart has an extraordinary capacity to connect, to love, and to feel deeply. When we experience something profound with another person, whether it's love, comfort, validation, or joy, our heart forms an emotional bond. And when that connection is disrupted by silence, absence, or distance, the heart feels a loss. The mind, ever the problem solver, steps in to address this perceived loss. It begins to replay moments that brought you happiness. It revisits conversations where you felt seen and understood. It creates scenarios where you imagine closure, reconciliation, or even a continuation of what once was. But here's the catch: the mind isn't necessarily seeking the person, it's seeking to soothe the ache of what the heart is missing. For example, if someone made you feel deeply loved, their absence might leave your heart longing for that love. The mind, in turn, may fixate on them as the source of that emotion. But the reality is, what you're truly missing isn't them. It's the feeling of being loved, cherished, and valued. The danger of fixating on the source. One of the greatest traps we fall into is confusing the source of an emotion with the emotion itself. When someone occupies your thoughts, it's easy to believe that they are the only person who can fulfill the longing in your heart. You may think, if only they were here, I'd feel whole again. But this is a dangerous narrative because it gives someone else power over your emotional well-being. It ties your sense of fulfillment to their presence, actions, or communication. And when that doesn't happen, it leaves you feeling stuck, powerless, and incomplete. The truth is, the feelings you miss, the love, the connection, the joy, don't solely belong to them. They are emotions you are capable of experiencing again with others, and most importantly, within yourself. The role of memories in the mind search. Memories play a pivotal role in how the mind seeks what the heart misses. When you think of someone who is no longer in your life, your mind doesn't just recall random details, it highlights the moments that were most meaningful to you. It focuses on the laughter, the tenderness, the times when you felt your best self in their presence. But memories can be deceptive. They often filter out the complexities, the conflicts, and the reasons why things didn't work out. The mind, in its attempt to soothe the heart, can paint an idealized version of the past, one that isn't entirely accurate. This is why it's so important to approach your thoughts with curiosity rather than attachment. Ask yourself, what specific emotion am I longing for in this memory? Is it the person I truly miss or the way they made me feel? How can I experience that emotion in a new and healthier way? By dissecting your memories and the emotions they evoke, you can begin to separate the person from the feeling. And in doing so, you can reclaim your power to meet your emotional needs without being tied to someone else's presence or absence, the heart's ability to heal. It's important to acknowledge that the heart's longing doesn't last forever. Just as it has an incredible capacity to connect, it also has an incredible capacity to heal. But healing doesn't happen when you're fixated on what's missing. It happens when you focus on what's present. When your heart feels the loss of connection, it's an invitation to reconnect with yourself, to ask, what parts of me have I neglected while focusing on them? How can I nurture myself in ways that feel meaningful and fulfilling? What relationships, passions, or experiences can bring me joy in this season of life? The heart's longing is not a weakness, it's a signal. It's telling you where your attention and care are needed. Instead of pouring that energy into someone who is no longer communicating, pour it into yourself. The mind's journey toward peace. Ultimately, the mind's search for what the heart misses is a journey, not a destination. It's a process of understanding, healing, and growth. It's about learning to sit with your thoughts without letting them control you. It's about recognizing that longing is a natural part of being human, but it doesn't have to define your present or your future. When you find yourself consumed by thoughts of someone who is no longer in your life, pause and ask yourself, what is my heart truly missing? And how can I honor that longing in a way that empowers me rather than keeping me stuck in the past? Because at the end of the day, the mind's search is not about finding the person, it's about finding peace within yourself. And that peace, once discovered, is far more enduring than any fleeting connection. As we journey through the labyrinth of our minds and hearts, it becomes clear that the silence of someone's absence isn't just an empty space, it's a mirror reflecting back our own desires, longings, and unresolved emotions. When someone occupies your thoughts without communication, it's not always about them. It's about the stories your mind writes, the void your heart seeks to fill, and the meaning you've attached to their presence. You see, the mind and heart are deeply interconnected. Your mind seeks answers, resolution, and closure, while your heart yearns for connection, fulfillment, and healing. But the true power lies not in waiting for someone else to return, speak, or validate your feelings. It lies in your ability to meet those needs within yourself. Understand this, your thoughts are a signal, not a sentence. They're pointing you toward what your heart values most. Whether it's love, validation, or a sense of belonging, these are gifts you can cultivate from within. Memories may pull you into the past, but they don't define your future. Longing may tug at your heart, but it doesn't have to control your narrative. So let the silence teach you. Let it guide you toward introspection, self-discovery, and growth. Recognize that while your mind may seek what the heart misses, your peace, joy, and fulfillment are not bound to anyone else's presence. You have the power to reclaim your thoughts, rewrite your story, and redirect your energy toward the life you want to build. Honor the emotions that arise, but don't let them tether you to what was. Instead, let them inspire you to create what can be. Remember, the silence of others is not a reflection of your worth, it's a canvas for your growth. And when you choose to meet yourself with the same love, care, and attention you once gave to someone else, you'll find that you are more than enough. Because the greatest connection you'll ever have is the one you cultivate within yourself. Embrace the silence, find your answers, and move forward with courage. Your heart is capable of healing, and your mind is strong enough to lead you toward a new chapter 1 filled with clarity, peace, and purpose.